following presentation is brought to you by the Alberta Podcast Network. Welcome to the Northern Nerdcast, the podcast that showcases the geeky, nerdy people, groups, and events in and around the city of Edmonton. Northern Nerdcast is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Visit their website at albertapodcastnetwork.com. If you like the show, we invite you to share it on all of your social media platforms and help grow our community of geeky, nerdy people, groups, and events in and around the city of Edmonton. Would you like to be a contributor to the show? For more information, visit our website at northernnerdnetwork.com. And now, here's the host of the show, Dan Schessel.
All right, so welcome back once again to the Northern Nerdcast. My name is Dan, and of course, we always have none other than our co-hostess with the mostest, Chelsea Thompson, joining us once again. Say
hi,
hello.
guys. Hello.
Howdy. And we also have joining us Mike. I'm combining the names together right now.
No, you've got Mick of Future Chat, Mike and Nick.
Mike and Nick from Future Chat, who are also fellow Alberta Podcast Network members as well. So say hello.
Yay.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Excited to be here.
Sorry. So we are going to be talking a little bit about Future Chat and what it is and your guys' podcast a little bit later on in the show. But first off, we like to really get down to the soul of the people who are on our show by asking each and every one of our guests what is on your geek shelf. So I'm going to start with Mike here. Mike, what is on your geek shelf?
The thing on my geek shelf, I guess you'd call it more of a geek desk because it's on my desk at work. But one of the things that I picked up a while ago was a set of solids of constant width. They are a geometric shape. The ones that I have are a four-sided variety, a tetrahedra, and they're basically designed so that any way you rotate them, the diameter of the shape is the same. So a sphere would be a one-faced solid of constant width, obviously. And then any other odd number of sides shapes that you have, you can turn into a solid of constant width. So the set that I have, when you have three of them, you can put like a book on top of them and roll it around, and it just rolls the way that it would as if there were balls underneath. So I have those on my desk, and people are always like, hey, what are those? And I'm like, let me show you. And grab a book off my shelf and blow their minds.
Let me initiate you into the world of my magic.
Yeah. I actually discovered them through a YouTube channel called Numberphile, as I'm sure some or many of you might be familiar with.
That's where you got them.
Yeah. So that channel's produced by Brady Heron, and the specific episode that I watched featured Matt Parker, and who's also a mathematician and is frequently on Numberphile. So I highly recommend checking out Numberphile if you're at all interested in math or science or just curious things of the world around us. They make math really accessible and apply it to a lot of real world things like statistics or game theory, a ton of things that you might have heard kind of tangentially or just use every day and don't know the math behind it. So highly recommend it.
Sweet.
That's awesome. So how about you, Nick? What do you have on your geek shelf?
Like Mike, it's not so much an actual shelf because I've been fairly mobile the past couple years. But honestly, it's probably plants. Not the nerdiest or geekiest thing out there, but I would have to stop you right there because I seriously thought I had a guest on our show a little while ago. It was from the city of Edmonton here, and they were here to talk about the goats that were eating the noxious weeds in Edmonton. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not geeky or nerdy in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, it is.
I was so dead wrong about that. That can be super nerdy, especially how much you can get into your plants or goats.
it's entirely about getting into the weeds, like trying different fertilizers, dealing with different pests. It's all just a tremendous opportunity for a deep dive whenever you're running short on things to do or think about. So my favorite things to grow are really hot and really tasty peppers. That's my but it's a terrible time for the episode because in a whitefly infestation.
Oh no.
That's awful.
It's tragically.
Well,
we're getting prepped for next summer.
Well, we're hoping that you can at least get, fix that. I don't know how would you go about fixing whitefly?
I hear your sympathy, your empathy, and I appreciate it.
I would like to remind everybody out there that we do have a live feed of this podcast. If you'd like to ever join us, we do this recording on Sundays at 8:00. On weeks that are not holidays. So on holidays, we take those off. But every other week, we're here right at 8:00, very punctual. We do have a chat. We do have someone who did make a comment, and it was Aaron, and he is very excited to be in the chat room. He said, "Nerds!" So
is that a collective declaration or directed at anyone in specific?
I think that's collective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
All right. So, well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Chelsea,
Yeah.
How was your week?
My week's been pretty good. It's sort of the first week back after the holidays, and it was really busy. I had 8 auditions this week,
Ooh.
which was kind of super fun. Yeah, so there's a bunch of student projects happening. Everybody is back from winter break, and so projects are getting underway. So all of the film schools in town are posting their projects. So I had a whole bunch of auditions, which is super fun. And I'm going to set and doing some background tomorrow. So that's a lot of fun. And then later in the week, I have a couple days with the school board. So back into the swing of things.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. How about you? How was your week, Dan?
My week was all right. It was very cold up here in Edmonton. For those who are up here, which is pretty much everybody who listens to the show, they all know how cold it was at the end of the week here. And my job entails me to be outside a lot. I do walk down a lot of various systems in a live industrial plant. And so that means I have to be outside walking these systems down and be out there essentially. And so for the last few days, we had a bunch of walk downs that we had to get done. And that meant I still had to be at work. They did send all our guys home, so nobody else was there, which made it all the more fun for me to be at work. When you know everybody else is at home enjoying their time off and you're still stuck at work. So yeah, I was there at work. And the really sad thing is on Friday, I'm like, oh, Friday, I only have this one walk down. I have first thing in the morning. It's super cold. I get to work. The walk down's not going to happen in the first thing in the morning. All right, so we'll do it a little bit later. No. So I ended up staying at work all day. And for those of you who know me personally, Friday was my birthday, and I was really hoping to take off.
Birthday.
Thank you. I was really hoping to take off on that day and just go home. That didn't work out the way I'd hoped. And so, yay. I got to stay at work. But I did get to go home. I got to hang out with a friend of ours who's been on the show quite a few times. His name is Marcus. And he made me a great birthday present. And I'm going to show you guys, but I'll try to explain this to other people who are on the audio side of this. This is why you should be watching the video. He made me this. Basically what it is, it's a 3D printed Destiny 2 pistol or hand cannon. But it's not just any hand cannon. It's the Sunshot from the game. It is very, very nicely detailed. It's very. I wanted this printed a while ago, but I'm like, oh man, I can't really afford to do this right now. But so he just did it for me.
So you know what that means, Dan. Now you have to make the cosplay to go with the gun.
Yes. I also have to paint this thing.
Yeah.
Which is not the easiest thing to be painting. I've actually no skill or no experience in painting things. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'm excited about it because I'm like, this thing's so cool looking. It even the middle thing comes like pops down.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's pretty fancy. Yeah, but I'll have to come up with some sort of Destiny 2 cosplay or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super excited for it. So thank you, Marcus. I know you're going to be listening to this later, and you're awesome. So that's pretty much about it. Chelsea,
Yeah,
do you want to take a quick little break here?
I sure do. I've got some fun things to tell all the people about.
All right, so let's do that, and we'll come back and we'll start talking a little bit more about Future Chat.
Perfect. So, in case you didn't know, the Northern Nerdcast is brought to you in part by the Edmonton Community Foundation. The Edmonton Community Foundation is a great way to put your money to work directly for charities that matter to you. The Edmonton Community Foundation will work with you to set up an endowment fund in your name. From that fund, they take any of the money you donated, plus any of the money earned from the fund to the charity of your choice. And you don't have to be rich to set up a fund. ECF will work with you to put any donation amount you want to work in your fund. Or you can get a group of people together and set up a fund to give to a charity as a collective. The ECF also has an awesome podcast, the Well Endowed Podcast, that's one of our fellow members on the Alberta Podcast Network. This month, the Well Endowed Podcast is talking all about winter as they go on an Arctic expedition with Cassandra Pryor. And they also catch up with artist Carla Ray Taylor to learn how the Paint the Rails project is telling Edmonton stories through public art. So, if you'd like to learn more about the Edmonton Community Foundation, check out their website, ecfoundation.org. Or if you want to listen to the Well Endowed Podcast, head on over to thewellendowedpodcast.com or find them on your podcast player.
Thanks, Chelsea. All right. So, like I said earlier, we do have Mike and Nick joining us from Future Chat to come and talk to us a little bit about what Future Chat is. They are fellow podcast members. I have listened to their show, and it's a very interesting show. I really do enjoy listening to it. So,
you flatter us.
Can you guys tell me or explain to the audience what your show is?
So the show Future Chat started about 3 years ago, and it looked very different from its current form.
Mm-hmm.
We had a extra host that is no longer with us, and the format was a little bit different. It started out having us pick a certain topic, either science or tech related, and kind of opining on it for an hour. And then it turned into a news story type show where we kind of talked about what was going on in the news and our thoughts on it and kind of how it related to us and what we could do about it and that kind of thing. So that's what it is in its current form. So it happens once a month, every 4 weeks. And we talk about the kind of stuff that's going on in the news, like SpaceX or Tesla. We'll kind of mention WWDC when it happens and kind of go over what to expect from that kind of thing. Medical news, a ton of different science related things that you may or may not have heard about. And I find it a good way to kind of connect with that and kind of bring it down onto a personal and even local level and how it relates to us, as Canadians, as Albertans, as Calgarians and Edmontonians as well. So that's kind of our focus and our passion behind the show.
Nice.
That's awesome. And so why did you guys decide that this is something that you guys should do?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but Rob approached me directly and asked if I wanted to be on a podcast. I asked him what I had to do, and he said, I don't know, just like show up and talk with me for an hour. I thought, yeah, okay, I could do that. But I mean, me personally, what's kept me coming back is, I mean, I really enjoy reading about this stuff just on my own time, but being able to take those stories you're most excited about, share them with Mike and Rob, and hear what they have to say on the matter. It's a really interesting time. I feel like we have fun on the podcast, and I mean, that's my 2 cents. Mike, what do you think?
I'm pretty much on the same page, and the way I got involved was pretty much the same way as well. Where I was like, "Hey, do you want to be on a podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." At this point, I hadn't listened to a podcast since like the days of the iPod video when I first had an iPod back in high school, and I honestly hadn't really been exposed to podcasts since then. But I was like, "Hey, that sounds kind of cool." And Rob and I grew up together. We're actually cousins, and so he moved away to Ottawa for university and has been living there since then. So we've been kind of separated physically for a while, but this podcast gave us a chance to kind of get together every week. Well, at the time it was every week, but get together regularly and just chat about stuff we were both passionate about and shared an interest in. So, and yeah, like Nick said, you know, it gives us a chance to share it with others who might also be interested in it. And just, yeah, the whole feeling of the show is very casual. It's just, you know, literally 3 friends getting around and chatting about stuff they're interested in. So, it's the kind of conversation is what you'd expect over, you know, a coffee or, you know, some drinks at a bar and just talking about the stuff you're passionate about.
So when you guys are putting your news stories together, who is the one that does all that kind of the work for you guys? Like, is it just a collective thing? Do you guys go out and ask other people, hey, what are you guys interested in? Or like kind of go through that whole process with us?
I think the biggest thing that motivates what we talk about is what's in the news. And, you know, you see a lot of stuff getting retweeted on Twitter or shared on Facebook and people talking about stuff like, say with like vaccinations, like that's a very hot topic. And so we'll talk about that and be like, you know, what are people saying about it? You know, what's the science behind it? And just kind of give a little bit of clarity to it. There's a lot of bad articles and stuff that go around, not necessarily right or wrong, but just badly written, badly just presented, and just demystifying a lot of that kind of stuff. That's part of the focus of our show. And same with things like SpaceX or Tesla, you know, that's in the news and people have heard of SpaceX, kind of what they do, but what's the relevance to that for us? And with Tesla, it's like, where's that taking the automotive industry? What does that mean for me as a consumer, as an Albertan? You know, urban centers are spread out 3 to 5 to 8 hours apart from where we are. So what does an electric vehicle future mean for me?
So do you guys see yourselves through the lens a little bit of like donning the cap of fact checker, or because of the day and age that we live in, the dearth of information that exists out there when a story comes out? As you said, there can be so much information out there that's just poorly written or confusing. Is that part of the draw where you put on the hat of looking for like clarification and, you know, making sure that the right facts are making it through to people so they can have informed conversations about stuff?
I mean, this is speaking for myself, but it's not necessarily the public at large. I mean, we will frequently find ourselves having conversations amongst the 3 of us because we have, I mean, Rob and I less so, but we have a fairly diverse knowledge set just in terms of science and technology. So personally, I don't know as much about consumer tech, and I find myself learning a lot about what all goes into that and what everything means from listening to Mike and Rob talk about it. But by the same token, whenever Mike has a question about anything remotely chemistry related, like, Rob and I both have our bachelors, so we can get pretty deep into the weeds pretty quickly on stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's not so much like, I don't want it to make it sound that we're the be all end all of correctness or facts, that kind of thing. It's
Speak
more
for
just
yourself, Mike. That's where I am.
Okay, speaking for just going forward and speaking for myself without having to disclose that every time. But you know, I just like having conversations and asking questions. You'll hear on a lot of episodes, Nick or Rob will bring up an article about something, and then I'll immediately start looking like, well, what about this? Oh, it doesn't go into much detail on this. I wonder what about this. And I think I've been likened to a wet blanket on a lot of these conversations.
More
but
like a pigeon on a statue. That's more like the stance you can take, Mike.
I see it more as, you know, you want to look at what the article is saying, but you want to ask more questions, and that's all our show is really about, is just asking those questions.
So as a fun aside, the nature of conversations like that, in my personal experience, then become incredibly tangential, which is kind of the fun of having conversations like that. What's in your recollection on the show? What's sort of the like wildest, weirdest, most fun or amusing like tangent string? You know how you can trace a conversation back of like, we started talking about this, but then we ended up talking about this. How did we get from there to there? What's sort of the wildest or craziest sort of tangent stream that you guys have ended up on the show?
Oh, man. That happens a lot. That's a tough question.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the time, like Nick is very, and Rob for that matter too, me less so, are very attuned and interested in politics. So I think you'll see a lot of like political tangents happen unknowingly. You know, we've talked about science.
Great discovery. What does that actually mean for like public consumption? And
yeah, and then it gets into like science policy and regulation, and then we go down this crazy rabbit hole of political history and comparing Canada and the US and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, whoa, how did we end up here? And you kind of have to reel it back in. And that's actually part of why we changed the format of the show even more recently, where before we'd each try to find one or two news items we wanted to talk about, but now we try to kind of start with one and just kind of see where it takes us, because we find that makes for the most interesting discussion is when we don't feel like we're always trying to reel ourselves back in. We're able to just kind of like start on something and just talk about stuff and see what other topics kind of come up. And you still want to keep it focused and intentional conversation, but you don't want to kind of like keep yourself restricted to what exactly you're talking about.
I'm gonna pipe in and say that I think our most hilarious tangent was discussing wine and beer pairings for woolly mammoth burgers. And that was one, like, I forget what it was, but humanity as a whole had discovered some like frozen remnants of woolly mammoth, which might have had DNA intact. And so then from there you go to like the cloning conversation, Jurassic Park, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like, oh man, if we had all this, I wonder what it would taste like. What would you pair with something like that? I think that's a less intentional one, but yeah.
Obviously, they have a stout or a porter or a like rich red wine that could stand up to all that meatiness.
But do we know that though? Maybe it's a super,
it's super fatty,
super mellow.
Yeah. Could be like a veal.
The thing we can do is, I know that they've been able to basically create meat in petri dishes, right? So why are they not doing this right with the
with a woolly mammoth?
Yeah, I mean, really, we should get these guys on this, and we should have some woolly mammoth burgers. I think that's something that the world needs.
Yeah,
I mean, if we're looking for an actual answer, gentlemen, I believe the answer is that first you have to create the woolly mammoth, then you have to get the actual cells to make the muscle tissue to make the burger. Yes, quite.
Well, they do have woolly mammoth DNA. I'm not sure if they have the protein DNA at this point.
Well, that's you need to grow the organism to get the proteins, to get the... Is that where we get proteomics? Anyway, digressions.
And here on the Nerdcast, we do the same thing.
That was a lovely, thanks. By answering that question, you gave us a lovely example of, I'm sure, how many of the conversations on your guys' show go. A little snippet to like hook our listeners into wandering on over to checking out Future Chat. Nice.
Very much so.
Nicely done. Well played.
I am still a little bit curious on what kind of pairing you guys ended up with at the end.
I mean, you kind of left with mystery.
Yeah, you'll have to go back and listen to the episode.
Ah, there you go. See, you guys, you hook them in. There's a good. So I know I recently listened to your last podcast that you guys had up, and you guys talked, I think, a little bit about poop in space.
Yes,
We sure did. We came in on very opposite ends of that conversation.
I was a little bit disappointed on how I thought it was a super exciting thing to have.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
So we brought up the wet blanket thing before. I'd like to know what side of the disagreement you landed on, Dan.
So here's I'm gonna put, because I this is still fresh in my mind at the moment, so I really have to jump into this conversation right now.
A nice fresh poop story. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, for the people who are listening to this podcast, they can take, what is it, the poop, and turn it into basically 3D printed plastic. Am I correct? Right?
Yeah, they extract certain acids and proteins out of it to make plastics.
Yes. Which they can use in space if they need, like, said tools or whatever. That, to me, is something that is super useful in space, especially if they're doing a long-term mission. Not because of the wrench thing, because the wrench is
just a symbol.
See, that's the whole premise behind the research, though, was it was a wrench.
One thing, they can use it for piping, for tubes, for walls, for anything that they breaks.
Yeah, for literally anything, because they can 3D print with the material.
Yes, they can 3D print with the material. So that, yes, one wrench is very exciting. Now, I believe when they first came out with 3D printers, it was NASA was doing a project up in space with it as well, and they printed a wrench up in space. That was one of the things that they did. That was like a long ago. And everyone was blown away by that. And now we have 3D printers everywhere. But to me, that printer is essential. You can't do a long-term mission without it.
Well, and I think the nature of space travel and space exploration, at least in the stages that we're still in now, is so utilitarian that literally nothing can go to waste.
So
they tune in for great conversation. They stay for the comedy.
I gotta pause our conversation here as well, and go on another tangent, because I've been playing this other this game lately. It's called Dream Daddy. Now, it's a computer game that essentially is a daddy dating simulator. And I heard it from, like, somewhere, like, I think the Beastcast or something, like some other podcast. And I was like, why are people so into this game? And so I had to check it out for myself. And this game is just full of dad puns, and I'm loving it. And yeah,
that's why people are hooked. It's all the dad jokes.
It's all the dad jokes. And I am like, okay, I see the appeal of this game now. So, anyways, there's our tangent for the night.
No, but in all seriousness, the utilitarian nature of everything is functional and has a purpose and serves more than one purpose and more than one function. When being as practical and space conserving and time conserving as possible, just because of the nature of the specific stresses that exist in space. To me, it makes complete sense that, if the waste is being collected and vacuum sealed and it's taking up space anyway, why wouldn't you search out a different way to recycle it and use it? That makes complete sense to me.
And briefly on that note, if you're interested in that general sort of idea, there's a documentary called I think it's called either Waste is Food or Waste Equals Food, discussing like a whole myriad of ways that we can take the waste we currently generate and turn it into, or take it and find productive uses for it. It's really interesting documentary if you have like a couple spare hours here or there.
And this is, again, going back to Nick at the beginning of the show saying, I'm not sure how nerdy plants are. There you go.
Well, for anyone who's seen The Martian,
Yeah.
you'll know that there's a lot of brain power that goes into knowing how to grow food.
And using your waste.
And
using your waste. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So I would like to just ask you guys, what are some of the other topics that you guys would say cover on your show? Or something that may have actually stood out to you in the last little while?
I mean, I can give you a teaser for my next story that I'm planning on if you want.
Ooh.
It's, I believe it's a cybersecurity firm. They are taking lava lamps, a big array of lava lamps, and using that to encrypt data.
Really? Like, I'm not even sure how you do that or what that would be.
Well, I'm sure that's a trade secret, like how they do that.
Is it trying to introduce randomness into the algorithm?
Well, that's
that would definitely be random.
The float patterns, right, of how it.
Yeah, like
sort of idea behind it.
I'm sure what you can do is just pick a specific spot within one lava lamp, and if there's a ball of wax there, that's a digital 1 or a 0, a bit, and that would be a degree of randomness. But I mean, the whole idea behind encryption and randomness and why it's so important is that so much of what computers actually try and do for encryption isn't truly random. So a lot of randomness functions are dependent upon the clock. But if you have the computing power and you know how they come to their random number, you can crack the code and figure out what they're trying to encrypt. And it's only by using either truly random or very reasonably pseudo-random numbers that you can actually get really good true encryption.
Yeah, like encryption is funny because they're, like you said, computers are actually not random. It's about as random as
trying to make order. That's why we invented computers, to help us organize and order things.
It's that's awesome. So I'm curious on how they would be able to do that. Like, how they would be able to use a lava lamp. Like you obviously said, if it's there, then it would pick up it as at a 1 or a 0. So this I'm kind of interested to see how that all would play out. Because you're right, that would be about as random as you possibly could get, is a lava lamp.
If you want to learn more, tune in to find out.
Yeah. Tune in next week.
That's awesome.
Tune in next week where Mike tells me why that's a stupid idea.
I'll save it for next week.
Why? It just doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense.
Nick, this is poop wrenches all over again.
So now, has science and technology and the general amazingness of the world always been a part of your particular daily lives even before the podcast came along, gentlemen? Whoever wants to take the floor first.
I think for myself, I've always been one to ask more questions and think critically and I guess on some level be skeptical of things. One of the first podcasts I got into was actually called Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And I think they're still around, but they've been around for at least 10 years at this point. And they're kind of similar to our show. I mean, a lot of them are PhDs who are on the show, they're hosts, and they'll talk about news items that, again, people talk about, and they'll ask questions about it. They'll talk about, they'll go pros and cons, whatever. And that kind of got me really thinking about the world around me. I've, been into philosophy and that kind of stuff before. And just on like the math and science side, like a lot of my electives in university I took as like math courses just because it interested me and I found it useful and just I could apply to a lot of different things I was taking. So at least as far as my interest in science and tech, I think that's where that comes from, is just hearing about stuff and having questions about it and having those questions answered, or at the very least talking about it and discussing with others and just, again, thinking critically about the things that we're hearing.
How about you, Nick?
If I'm being totally honest, I've forgotten what most of the question was. It's like to what degree the stuff that goes on in day-to-day life has interested me, or like
well, before the
science
podcast came along, was science and tech a big part of your life? Is it, something that has always interested you? Where did this, when Rob approached you and said, "Hey, I'm doing this podcast and we're going to talk about this stuff," and you said, "Oh yeah, sure, I can do that." Before that happened, was it something that was already an interest, or
right?
Was
Actually,
podcast the impetus, or
totally, like, was more or less the beginning of the end of my blogging career, because I mean, before that, it's still up, I think, the blog Vodka and Equations that I just casually go on every once in a while if there's something I really desperately want to write about. But I was writing a lot about the science and tech that interested me. And once Future Chat came along, I found that a more satisfying way to go about sating my curiosity. And so it was absolutely a part of my life before the podcast. This is just, I mean, podcasting in general has been a really fulfilling outlet for a lot of it.
So let me ask you, for you guys, what is podcasting like? What does that mean to you? Like as a medium, like how is it a good way for you to express what you're thinking or doing, or like, tell me what podcast means to you on a personal basis.
I mean, for me, it's not just expressing ideas and thinking about ideas. It's the ability to bounce it off of other people in real time and really dig your teeth in to, or that's a terrible metaphor, but really digging in and like,
he's going back to
really trying to think things out.
Sorry.
That's okay. You go on.
How about you, Mike?
For me, I think it's along the same lines is having those conversations. A lot of the podcasts I listen to as a consumer of podcasts are discussion shows. I guess they're all discussion shows. And I feel like when I'm listening to a podcast, I'm always wanting to like jump in and share my 2 cents with whatever's being talked about, especially if I'm listening to like a show from people I know, like Nick and Rob are actually, they have another podcast, which they haven't actually done in a while. So you guys better get on that. But when they're having their conversations, I'm always wanting to like, what about, and just be a part of that conversation. And it goes the same for any other podcast. So when I'm taking part in a podcast, I feel like I'm offering that same thing to others. So I'm fulfilling that on my own end, being able to have that conversation in that moment. But for those who are listening to us, I feel like they're taking part in that conversation with us, even just as an audience. They're sharing in that conversation, and a lot of the time maybe thinking the same things as us or having opposing thoughts, but at least that conversation is happening. And that's what I feel that podcasts in general offer to their listeners.
So you were talking a little bit about your audience. Can I, like, for the people who are out there listening to your show, how are they able to like interact with you guys? Like, how is it possible for them to get their thoughts in as well?
So we do have our show on a live Google Hangout stream as well. So like those who are interacting through the chat feature, they're able to do that as well. And we obviously have Twitter and Facebook pages as well. So those would be the obvious things. Like on our website, there's email if you prefer that. But I mean, like in today's world, you can't really exist without any sort of social media presence. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of us for sure.
So do you guys have longstanding fans that you have continuing discussions with? If a particular topic of the week is really interesting and generating a lot of questions, that the conversation will continue via social media after the episode is done?
Mm-hmm. I think for the most part, a lot of our listeners are like friends of ours. So a lot of time we'll hear directly from them. So they may not be interacting on our social media channels. We actually had one listener a while ago, back in our early days, and she was actually from Russia. And she would tune in and listen and be like, "Oh, you guys are talking about this today. Oh, I heard about that in school," and like interacting with us through the chat feature as we were talking about us. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like in all honesty, like you can just look at our Twitter feed. Like our social media interactions aren't huge for the most part. Like I find that people, I think, tend to interact more with the audience, like the hosts themselves, versus like the show channel itself. Like I think they'll use the show channel as like an RSS feed almost, just to know when the episodes are out and to tune in live and that kind of thing. I don't know what you guys find. It seems like your audience is quite interactive, at least from the chat feature that I've seen that you guys are using.
It can be. Sometimes some days is more exciting than others.
But we always have Aaron. We love you, Aaron. Aaron is one of our long-standing listeners and viewers. And we love him for tuning in every week. So we shout out to him whenever we can.
Aaron, I love you too. I just want to be on record.
Thanks for watching, Aaron.
So I have lost a screen. So
those technical difficulties we were talking about earlier.
Yes. Yeah, one of my screens just went right out. So I had to, at least I know where to put my mouse to get what I needed. So
you need some filler? We could fill.
Where can people find you
for a while? We're pros.
On the webs and stuff.
Oh, sorry. I spoke over Dan. Where can people find you if they want to find you on social media or listen to the show? Or
So on Twitter, you can find us at _FutureChatFM. We're also on Facebook. You just search Future Chat on Facebook. The URL is probably facebook.com/futurechat. I don't know off the top of my head. But we're on there. Myself, I'm at MA_YYC. And Nick, I'll let you give your handle.
I am at NWA Maddox, but not a great place to get a hold of me, honestly.
We'll pass the message on to Nick if you want to chat with him.
Basically what happens is stuff will happen on my social media. Then the guys will reach out to me via other methods and be like, "Oh, hey, what did you think about that?" I'm like, "Oh, wait, what? Something happened?"
So this is actually what usually happens. Usually the Leafs are doing something, and then Nick jumps on Twitter to talk about the Leafs, and then he responds to all his Twitter interactions. That's usually what happens.
That's basically
all
how
it
goes.
All right, awesome. So we are going to take another quick little break here, and then we will talk a little bit about some of the events that are happening in the city of Edmonton. Okay, so like I said earlier, we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. And if you guys go on over to albertapodcastnetwork.com, you'll find some more amazing podcasts, like Alberta-made podcasts, just like Future Chat and even Desktop, right? So you guys can go over there. You guys can check out those podcasts. There are like just so many podcasts being added onto that list. Like every time I turn around, Karen is announcing another batch of podcasts. So it's ever growing, and people are the list is just amazing. I'm always impressed by the podcasts that are on there right now. So go on over there to albertapodcastnetwork.com, powered by ATV, and go check out some awesome Alberta made podcasts. All right. So, like I said, we are going to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming events here in the city of Edmonton. So let's start with on January 17th, we have Story Slam happening. I have gone to Story Slam. It's been a while since I've gone there. We've actually have a video up on our website somewhere. It is buried because it was so long ago. I'll have to actually go there and talk to them again. We should have them on the show again.
Yeah, we should. They're lots of fun.
They are fun. So basically what Story Slam is they have people come out, they read a 5-minute story, and it can be anything. Anything goes. It could be a true story. It could be fiction. It could be anything. And you can just basically go out there, you enjoy some stories, and you vote on the best one at the end. It's awesome.
Pretty fun. It's open mic night for storytellers.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty fun tales that come out of the mix.
Yeah. And they all it's like a battle royale. They all fight it out for story glory. Yeah, that's right.
Dateline.
Yeah. So January 19th, we have a Taste of Animathon happening here, and this is happening at the Shaw Conference Center. And this is a good, I always like Animathon. Animathon is such a great event that happens here in Edmonton. And
if you want to see some of the most impressive cosplay that happens in the city during the year, go and check it out.
I'm gonna guarantee you, if you go to Animathon, Taste of Animathon, there will be cosplay. Just guaranteed. Animathon is one of the biggest cosplaying events in the city, for sure. So if you want to see some awesome cosplayers, or if you're a cosplayer yourself, go check this event out. It is Taste of Animathon happening January 19th at the Shaw Conference Center. Moving along, we have January 25th at the TELUS World of Science. We have Dark Matter Game On happening. And so this is their after hours event that is happening at the TELUS World of Science. And this is being sponsored by BioWare. They are going to have, I know they're going to have some video games up on the big screen, the big IMAX screen that they have there. It's a lot of fun. We went there last year for it, and it was just amazing. It's a great time. Dark Matter happens once a month. They open the doors after hours. There's drinks. There's all sorts of stuff happening in there. It is definitely something to go and check out. And I believe that even Extra Life, everything, all the awesome gaming stuff that's in the city is going to be there. So go and check that out. We have a High Score pub here in Edmonton, which is our esports bar and gaming lounge. And on January 27th, they are going to be doing the EFGC presents the Tournament of Power. And this is just a fighting tournament. So if you're into fighting games, go and check this out. They are having a tournament there at High Score Esports Bar and Gaming Lounge on January 27th. Moving along, in March, I know this is quite a ways away, but I really do need to tell everybody that Edmonton is having their CollectorCon happening on March 4th. So that is, if you were looking for that special collectible that you're looking for, this is definitely the place to go and get that. They always have so much there for that. And on March 30th, we have Video Games Live here in Edmonton. And this is like the music of video games. And this is going to be happening at the Alberta Jubilee Auditorium. and is definitely something that we are super excited for. I am definitely going to be trying to go out to this event for sure, because I love video games and I love the music of video games. And I went to the last time they were here, and it was amazing. So that is that. Yeah, I want to thank everyone out there for watching. I want to thank Mike and Nick, or I should say Mick, for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
It was definitely our pleasure.
I would really encourage everybody out there to go and check out their podcast, Future Chat. You guys also have another podcast as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, Rob and I have a show called Desktop, which is similar to Future Chat, but it kind of focuses a bit more on technology and kind of how it affects us in our daily lives. And it's I guess you could call it a spin-off of Future Chat, because Nick got tired of hearing us talk about cell phones. So we basically took our toys and went home and started our own separate podcast about cell phones. So,
and I gotta say, I'm loving
Amazon Echoes.
I'm loving Future Chat so much more.
But once Google I/O and WWDC roll around, then we will be talking about cell phones again. So don't worry, Nick.
I had no illusion in my mind. Don't you worry.
It was too good to be true.
That's about the size of it.
So where can all our lovely listeners and viewers find both Future Chat and Desktop if they want to pull up some episodes and listen?
You can actually find them both on albertapodcastnetwork.com. And so we're both listed there, and you can check out some other local Alberta podcasts as well while you're in the area.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How about us, Dan? If anybody wants to get in touch with us, wants to be on the show, has upcoming events that they want us to feature, how can they get a hold of us?
Well, they can check us out on our very own website, northernnerdnetwork.com. You guys can check us out on Twitter on northern_nerd, Facebook at facebook.com/northernnerd. And we even have our own YouTube. That's right. We have our own YouTube, and it's been there since the beginning. YouTube.com/northernnerdnetwork. And that is it. That is all. I want to thank everyone out there for watching and or listening to this episode. And I'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Northern Nerdcast. Northern Nerdcast is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Check out their website at albertapodcastnetwork.com. For all things geeky and nerdy, including all of our social media platforms, go to northernNerdNetwork.com. Thanks again, and we appreciate your support.